Hey there guys, back with another monthly movie review, this being the first one dedicated to the films I've seen in 2024. Life got in the way a little bit this month, more than it did in December, but I still have a good handful of films to talk about today, starting with Night Swim. Night Swim is a movie that's doing its best to uphold the legacy of Trashuary and giving us the worst pieces of dog shit for entertainment at the start of the year. Nothing I've seen from James Wan lately, either it be his own films that he wrote and directed, or ones like this, which he produced, have been good. It feels like one of those earlier mid 2000 horror films like Dead Silence or Darkness Falls, but much worse because it holds its punches the entire way through. And I think the reason why this movie is afraid to do anything is because the story was never meant to stretch for an hour and a half. This film is based off a short horror film, which I'm assuming the first 7 minutes of this movie is the adaptation of that short film, with the other 120 minutes being filler like an anime waiting for the manga to catch up. The whole plot of this dumbass movie is that a family moves into this new house that occupies a haunted swimming pool because the father is going to use it for his physical therapy so he can get better and get back to playing in Major League Baseball. Soon after moving in though, our demon pool not only starts to haunt the family, but possesses the dad, allowing him the opportunity to become stronger, faster, healthier than he's ever been if he gives the pool a sacrifice, which I find to be even a worse premise than just a haunted pool due to a little girl drowning in it, so now her spirit haunts the place or something. Instead, we get this goofy performance by Wyatt Russell, the son of Kurt Russell, you know, that Kurt Russell, the renowned actor. But Wyatt over here, as Ray Waller, is one of the worst possession under the influence of a demon performances I've ever seen. When the family first moves into the house, Wyatt's cleaning the pool, to the which the spirit cuts him in the drain pipe, infecting his body. And the biggest change we see in Wyatt after he's infected with this 1,000-year-old demon is that he wants to fuck his pool. Ray Waller never shuts the fuck up about this pool for the rest of the movie. He's out at 2 a.m. swimming in this thing. He's telling his family all about the benefits of a pool and telling them that a pool party is great and to invite everybody, friends, family, the baseball team, the realtor, anybody who is anybody needs to see this pool. It's not a subtle performance, it's brutally bad, but because it almost reaches levels of something like Mark Wahlberg performance in The Happening, it does make Wyatt Russell's overacting to be the one watchable thing in this film. I gave this movie a 1-star rating on Letterboxd, and it would have been a 0 stars if not for this portrayal of Ray Waller given in this movie. Bryce McGuire did the bare minimum of all the characters in this movie. You have your nuclear family that you always get in these type of films. You have the dad who just bought this house and needs the haunted residence for his job. You have the supportive wife who notices all the eerie things happening first. You have your basic teenage daughter with no character other than she's popular / the normal sibling in the family. And in saying that, you can't forget the youngest sibling, who is always a boy that is frail in stature and always having the most antisocial, offbeat personality. This kid's unique trait is that, and I say that in quotations, is that he likes quarters. A person's personality shouldn't be quarters. Maybe you could have the youngest brother trying to be protective of his older sister while projecting his insecurities and not being able to protect the family like his dad did before all this crazy started, or be as manly as his dad ever was. But the film would rather spend 15 minutes trying to build a suspenseful moment that falls flat from the poor writing. The greatest example of this poor character building is with the daughter Izzy, played by Amelia Harfoldi, and the mother Eve, played by Carrie Condon, and the son Elliot, played by Gavin Warren. In the movie, we learn that Eve gave birth to Izzy, the father Ray. While the father Ray was doing a Major League Baseball game getting ready to bat, when suddenly the birth of his firstborn gave him this amazing strength and he hit a home run out of the park. The father goes on about the story as one of his proudest moments. But later on in the film, the son, Elliot, played by Gavin Warren, expresses insecurities in not being able to live up to his dad's baseball legacy for the first and only time in the movie. The mother tells Gavin a story about how when Izzy was his age, she felt the same insecurities, and anytime Izzy got insecure, Eve would make 2 fists and put one on top of each other like she's holding a baseball bat, symbolizing that Izzy has the strength just as her dad did. To which the mom then does the same hand motion to her son to show him that he's got this. Now, any normal screenwriter would then later use that in the climax, especially in a horror movie, for the final killing blow to the antagonist, with the mom doing the hand gesture to the son as he delivers the fatal blow to the monster and fulfilling his protective duties. Or that's how I at least would have written the movie. Instead, it literally never comes up again. It's not even just character personality traits and motives that appear for just a second before being forgotten on the sidelines, it's also characters themselves. At first, I thought the movie was going to be a little tongue-in-cheek with its concept. During the first act, when the family moves into the house, they get a pool contractor to look at the pool, and he's the exposition dump for the scene. The only issue is that this character, who is introduced as somebody with knowledge and can benefit the film, on top of being written a little goofy and quirky, talks to them about the pool only one time and is never seen again. This character could have been your Jamie, your Tangina Barons. He was the guy that tells you about your Bagul problem and who comes back to give you the shocking revelation near the end or to be killed off to add to the body count. But no, he's just never to be seen again. That's the kind of mistakes this film makes. The biggest issue with this movie boils down to one thing: the premise. A haunted pool is just the goofiest thing to come up with. The unknown is always scarier, which is actually a reason why so many horror films work. We don't have enough time to learn about what the horror is or how it works. We just see the horror itself and our victim experiencing it. When you take a short and expand it to a feature film, you take that luxury away and you have to explain why to what's happening. And the reason why this movie has a haunted pool is the laziest explanation, because they just say, this used to be a haunted springs, but after tens to hundreds of years, the area changed into a neighborhood and now the hot springs became a pool. Makes sense. But why is it a haunted spring? Well, the movie's reasoning is, don't think about it. They don't know. They don't know how long the spirit's haunted the springs. They don't know how long it's haunted the pool. They don't know why it's there. Don't ask questions. It doesn't matter. And because they try to have their cake and eat it too, explaining the supernatural force without ever explaining what it is, it doesn't allow us as an audience to ever connect with it, on top of ever understanding what it is. My biggest issue with supernatural films, especially in this new era after the 2010s with movies like Mama or the Conjuring universe as a whole, is that these ghosts seem to be able to do whatever they want with no weakness or logic to their abilities. The pool in this movie seems to be able to mimic people's appearances and voice, teleport, possess, has super strength and more, but its weaknesses are nothing. Not only that it has all these abilities, but it still seems to be incapable of killing somebody. One of the weakest parts of these PG-13 supernatural movies is the lack of deaths. This is a trend I've started seeing a lot by the Conjuring universe, where they have an opening kill at the start of the movie, as it's a cardinal rule to have an opening scene either showing off the killer and their skill set, or setting up why the horror is about to take place. But after that opening scene, any character presented in the film moving forward is completely safe. You see it in the Conjuring movies, Insidious, The Curse of La Llorona, and now Night Swim. It wouldn't be so aggravating if the movie didn't put these characters in situations where the demon pool spirit could have easily taken any of them out at any point, but didn't because it would have ruined the movie. Elliot, as previously established, is the weird one in the family, having an obsession with quarters, so in his scene alone in the pool, he's swimming alone, bobbing his head in and out of the water as he swam, but then one of his quarters from the jar beside the pool fleeing into the water. Now his parents play this game where they toss quarters in the pool while Izzy and him go and collect them underwater. So he's not fazed by this coin toss, but he does question who threw it in there since nobody is around. Even so, he swims under and grabs the quarter, only for another one to be tossed in just a little deeper into the water, and Elliot goes for that one too. This one goes on for about 2 to 3 minutes, like I'm watching a Peter and James Woods scene.
Peter? Ooh, a piece of candy. 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 Ooh, a piece of candy.
Man, I hope that's James Woods, because if it's me under there again, I'm going to be really pissed off.
And finally, when he gets to that last quarter at the bottom, nothing happens. He swims back to the top and is a little spooked nobody is outside, only to be then attacked by the ghost as we see a rotten arm come out of the side of the pool filter grabbing Elliot, and Elliot, this frail, skinny, weak kid, just swims away from this ghost with super strength. Every scene plays out like this, where they have a long drawn out sequence that is meant to make you believe something is about to happen, but then nothing does. Subverting your expectations, yes, which you can do one time and one time only. They do this for Elliot, Eve, Izzy, and anybody else who could be killed in that pool, because Bryce McGuire wrote himself in a corner when he didn't give the ghost pool a weakness, but rather gave it a goal, and that goal is to get a sacrifice for the dad to be healed in better strength than he ever was before. So if the pool gets one person, even just one person, no matter how they die in that pool, the movie ends, which makes our villain in our horror film incapable of being able to kill anybody until the very end of the film. So you better hope the opening kill in that first 7 minutes will satisfy your horror taste buds. This movie is so confusingly bad, and I don't know how they think properties like this will be able to keep generating them loads of profit when other studios are starting to take horror more seriously again. Sure, Blumhouse has its Halloween money, but Exorcist Believer was panned as a terrible film all around, and now Night Swim is losing money. It made its $31 million on a budget of $15 million, but after you take that $15 million and multiply it by 2.5 due to advertising costs and other expenses, this movie lost profit for the studio. It has a few more weeks to make its money, but word of mouth is definitely not doing any favors, and neither will I. Do not go and see this movie. We need Blumhouse and other studios to stop trying to make cheap cash grabs and to do better. We all know I enjoy my DC films, especially my animated ones, but this film was kind of tricky to review because I don't think the overall story is bad, just not what I was expecting. The film is titled Justice League, but they were right to put Flash on the forefront of the poster since this is really a Flash story.
Most of you are aware that you live in a reality parallel to many versions of your universe. I've gathered you all to save your world.
You know the moment in Batman vs. Superman where Barry pops up and warns Bruce about Lois while also saying that he's too early? This whole part 1 is practically a Flash story where he jumps through different points of time leading up to the crisis. We do get Justice League moments that the title offers us, but instead of getting a whole movie showcasing how these 7 became the Justice League, like Justice League War, we get flashbacks to a moment never put on film except for this one. And I think that's where some of the issues pop up here. With the Flashpoint animated universe, we got less solo stories and a lot of huge team-up stories with the Justice League and Teen Titans, so while the individual heroes had less character, them as a team unit shined. It's the opposite here in the Tomorrowverse, where almost every story has been a solo story, focusing on the adventures of one hero in their city, with only a handful of team-up stories, and one of them being a legion of superheroes, a team in the future who doesn't interact with any of the other teams we know and love. So this huge crisis event that has taken out every world and every version of the characters we know doesn't hit as hard as it should. I am hoping that because this is a part 1, that the second installment will be heavily focused on the Justice League as other worlds and other iterations of these characters cease to exist. But even though this Justice League movie has a lead foot on Barry's story, doesn't mean it's not a good story. People who are familiar with the comic line that's been out for 40 years know that Barry doesn't survive the events of this. He vanishes during the comic, not to be seen for 20 years, and I'm not even talking like 20 comic book years, I'm talking 20 real years. So I completely understand why they're giving him such a character-focused story part for this first part. My speculation is that James Gunn is going to keep Barry Allen dead for a while after this trilogy. He seems like the type of person who would want to give Wally the time he deserves in the animated movie universe as well. But I would be okay with that, especially after the story that they told with him. I truly believe this is the best adaptation of Iris that we've ever gotten on the small or big screen. You see why Iris is his lightning rod in the movie. She is his rock, and with no powers of her own, she ends up being just as badass as everybody else. This movie made me see Iris and Barry in the same light as Clark and Lois, like I never have, and if you're a fan of The Flash, it's worth seeing this movie just for that. This is a highlight of why Barry is the heart of the Justice League. Crisis on Infinite Earths was a one-year event in the 80s, and I'm praying that part 2 comes out in June, which part 3 falls in December. I would recommend you checking this out even if you haven't been following the Tomorrowverse, as this is a great Flash story, and I'm looking forward to seeing what James Gunn is going to do with the next universe.
Great Scott.
What's happening?
The universe. It's all vanishing.
Look!
This is it. I won't let you go.
Is it as bad as it looks?
Yes.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Gremlins is another weird movie for me to review, since I feel like this one will be more of a rant, and I know it's a movie that many people love, and I can see why, but I just don't enjoy it. I find the movie takes itself too goofy, and I know it's a gateway horror film for kids, but by the time I had seen this movie at the age of 8 or 9, I had already seen Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, hell, I had seen Waxwork, another Zach Gilligan film by that time, so this didn't do anything for me in the horror department, and now, as a 23-year-old, it does nothing to me in the character department.
Go ahead, open it.
What is it?
I think the goofy tone the film has and trying to be the stepping stone to a horror genre for kids, it should have had more of a kid-friendly cast. The film suffers from having this adult bank teller being the protagonist of this kid-toned movie and makes him seem even more careless and irresponsible than he is already written to be. And then you have the other moments that pull me out completely, like the father's voiceovers telling us we're about to witness a story like we've never seen. It's supposed to add a layer of fantasy and childlike wonder to this world we're in, but it comes across as a cheap, quick way to get information out that the script lacked while shooting. And let's talk about the title of the film for a second, Gremlins, because gremlins aren't what these creatures are. The main character, Billy, is gifted this tiny creature by his father. The tiny creature is a mogwai. I'm assuming some rare, ancient creature found somewhere in Asia, as assumed from the Asian man Billy's father got it from. Now, the father doesn't even let his son name his own pet, with the father giving the mogwai the name Gizmo due to him making inventions. So the creatures are mogwais, the name of the mogwai is Gizmo. Where does the name Gremlins come from? Well, from Billy's racist neighbor, of course, spewing off some myth that whenever electronics or cars fuck up, it's not some faulty engine, but little creatures messing with your stuff. And more really, he's just complaining about the Russians or any other country and their faulty machinery. And the film doubles down on this, with even him yelling gremlins during his death scene. Now we all associate this word with a racist. And the kills in this film are very weak, with most, if not all, being off screen. And I get that it's a kid-friendly movie and that you can't show these kids all this gruesome stuff, but every person that dies is either off-screen or from a piece of technology, not the gremlins themselves. The old lady's just flung through her second-story window after her lift chair is cranked to 11, blasting her off her ramp. The racist and his wife are ran over by his own snowplower, with the camera just getting closer to his face. The professor that Billy goes to dies off screen, and the only ones we ever really see die are the puppets themselves. It would have been so much cooler and way more threatening if they were ripping people to shreds or eating them. It would have given some sense of danger. And speaking about the puppets, if there's one thing in this movie I can appreciate, it's them. It must have been excruciating working with that many puppets and trying to get the scenes to work the way they did. And the puppets really do look amazing, with Gizmo looking a little more animatronic and keeping him hidden for most of the time, but the gremlins are seen at the forefront of the screen for a lot of the movie, and they are able to have a personality with their movements, and the voice actors do a great job with just the grunts and the noises that they make. My one complaint about how good the puppets look, though, is Joe Dante knew the puppets looked amazing too, and he just shot this 3 to 4 minute scene where the gremlins are just causing havoc, just beer, fire, death, laughing, gambling, killing. It just goes on, and I was on a 6-hour train ride home, and all I felt like doing was getting up and doing something else. It's like in Little Shop of Horrors when the plant goes on a 10-minute spree just destroying the world. We get it. It's too much. There's no dialogue. We need something else on the screen for me to be interested. It just went on for way too long. I like what the film is trying to do, trying to bring horror to children. It sets up those horror tropes pretty well. The first kill with the professor is off screen, and there's no real answer for it, leaving nobody to believe Billy at the start, just like any other protagonist in a horror film. And they use the classic trope of the villain coming back for one more scare after their initial defeat, but when you only use classic tropes without bringing anything new to the table, even great animatronics and visuals can't keep me entertained. Overall, I wish I could like this film, but I don't. I do recommend it to people though if you want to get a young kid into horror, but more as an experiment to see if it can actually scare them, rather than just colorful creatures spewing noise for an hour.
In a matter of hours, this town is going to be turned into a major disaster area. Now you have got to warn people!
I thought 1999 was supposed to be the best year for movies. This movie is all over the place, so Random Hearts is a very fitting title. It's no shocker this movie wasn't even nominated by any Academy for Best Adapted Screenplay, as this film is based off a book with the same name.
The aircraft involved was a 737.
She went to Miami today. I need to find out what plane she was on.
If Peyton's traveling, I don't think it's for the store.
Are you saying she lied to me?
The film stars Harrison Ford and Kristen Scott Thomas as Dutch Van Dambroek and Kay Chandler, and follows them as Dutch tries to unravel the mystery of why his wife Peyton, played by Susanna Thompson, lied about where she was at and then was found deceased sitting next to Kay Chandler's husband, Colin, played by Peter Coyote, also deceased after a plane crash. The film's economy comes from the two leads, as Dutch is in internal affairs in the police department and is obsessed with finding the answers no matter what it changes or how it destroys his life, while Kay is running to be a congresswoman and a sex scandal dealing with her husband can ruin her whole campaign. Instead, she decides to ignore her husband's actions to allow a picture-perfect life until she can't run away from it any longer. And that contrast is relevant for a lot of the film. It's the entire reason why you as an audience can not only understand, but relate on why Kay won't admit her husband was committing sin. He is the everyday man, while she is surrounded in politics and events that are larger than just one person. But the film is slow paced, and it doesn't help that the romance isn't in the movie either, with these two having no chemistry. Dutch never seems like he is ever interested in Kay, and I don't know if that's because Harrison Ford always has this dry, hates the world type of demeanor, but he especially never seems to have any emotion throughout the film. Now, there is a subplot going on where Dutch is trying to catch and convict two officers of illegal and corrupt work, and those scenes do have some punches, shotguns, and pistols involved, maybe even shooting or two. But when your film is putting you to sleep already, you need some Air Force One type action going on, which the film doesn't do. The film is weird though, as it's clear Payne and Cullen were having an affair with each other, but they keep building up the mystery of if they had sex or if they didn't have sex. So you're waiting for this big revelation, but the revelation is not only that Cullen was having an affair with Payton, but also with another one of Kay's married friends. Like, who cares? We know he was already a horn dog. And with this being a romance mystery film, they have to keep the if they did or didn't a secret until near the end, but it shouldn't have taken this long to get the answer. We get this weird female loyalty that I don't get is morally right. Kay is actively denying and ignoring all this information presented to her about her husband's infidelity, but Dutch is searching for the answers. He accepts what his wife did, he just wants to know why. Was it him? Was she missing something in the marriage that he couldn't provide? He needs to know, but nobody is helping him. Most of Kay's work buddies are decently helpful, but her manager is explicit in saying that if she knew, she wouldn't tell Dutch. This film is boring, with a mystery that has an answer laid out right in front of us, and a romance that's not worth diving deeper into as the flames burn as hot as a dying candle. Skip this 99 film, as there's so much better in that year that makes it the movie giant that it is.
Could you characterize your relationship with the sergeant?
Nobody knows who I am anymore.
I know who you are.
The Craft Legacy was a film I immediately put on when seeing the poster for it on Netflix, just like it had with its 96 predecessor. And just like its predecessor, I thought this film messed up everything it was trying to go for, even worse than the mess that Andrew Fleming caused before. It's a movie that focused on trying to shove a new wave feminism in your head, while creating the most boring and bland women to advocate this message, so it leaves no impact. The movie follows Lily, an emotionally lonely and isolated teenager who moves into a new town following the spontaneous marriage between her mother and her new stepdad. The stepdad does have 3 sons, though these 3 sons never play a significant role in the story, so forget about them. I only bring this up because forgetting to use aspects of your story is a running problem for this movie. Lily quickly, and I mean quickly, becomes entangled in a group of witches where they grow stronger yet more irresponsible with their powers. Lily's story here sounds a lot like our gal Sarah's from the first movie, and that's because it is. It seems like the writer and director of this movie, Zoe Lester-Jones, took lessons straight out of Andrew Fleming's playbook, taking everything Andrew did wrong, like the use of magic, kills, climaxes, and character development, and going, I think I'll do a worse job than he did, while taking the little good out of The Craft by stripping of its gothic look, engaging camera work, and memorable female leads. Speaking about our female leads, we have Lily, as I previously mentioned, but we also have these 3 girls who will befriend her in the film. Tabby, played by Lovie Simone, Frankie, played by Gideon Alden, and Lourdes, played by Zoe Luna. Everything about these 4 is less original and less entertaining than the 4 that came before them. Look at the way they dress. They look like every other teenager now. That emo gothic style that the girls from the 96 movie had really worked. They stood out in the crowd of the blue and beige from the Academy outfits. The original 4 weren't interesting either, but at least their style was able to speak volumes for the tone of the movie. There is one thing I want to bring up about one of the girls, and that's Lourdes. Now, she is a trans witch, a biological male transitioned to a female. All good, no problem with me. Let flowers blossom.
I mean, people are entitled to their sexual proclivities, I mean, let there be 1,000 blossoms bloom as far as I'm concerned, But I ain't spending any time on it because in the meantime, every 3 months, a person is torn to pieces by a crocodile in North Queensland.
I couldn't even tell she was a trans character at first, but the movie wouldn't stop making comments about it. It isn't something you have to repeatedly tell us. I'm all for having LGBTQ representation in my content, but you need to give them a personality other than their sexuality. Kurt from Glee isn't just gay. In the first episode, you can already see he's a kid dealing with bullying, but even so, he has pride in himself and he holds his head up high as he can with his ambitions of being a Broadway star. This isn't even something I would normally bring up since somebody's sexual orientation has no effect on me, but then the movie tries to tell me that a woman gets their magic from the women's section, men get their magic from the men's section, and trans people have their own section they get magic from.
You know, point taken. My bad, Lou.
Yeah, it's all good. Y'all know trans girls got our own magic anyway.
Or they do. And look, that's why covens have always been so important, because half the battle of having powers is believing you do.
Just have a line where Lily mentions warlock and witches, and Lou, Tabby, or Frankie explain those terms are outdated, like waiter and waitress, and that we just say magic users now. That allows you not to have to write this cringy dialogue trying to allude that magic can tell the difference between genders. Zoe Lister-Jones is trying to push an agenda with this movie though, something that will become apparent very soon. None of this matters anyways, as these are just stupid questions arising from a dumb movie. Plus, how would I know how magic works? Really, how would I know? This movie never explains it or uses it to its full potential, so just like before, let's talk about how the craft wastes magic. The magic in this movie is a joke. The film shows off these girls levitating, casting fire from their hands, telekinetically pushing people, being able to see the actual essence of aura themselves, and even being able to freeze time and space, which sounds really cool, and 10 times better than the first one, but all this happens within a 1-minute montage of the film. The magic is only as strong as the pacing, and the pacing in this movie is trash. They show us everything these women can do in 1 minute, except for telepathically being able to speak to each other. I'm not joking. Sure, they mention how they'll be able to shapeshift at one point, but even then, they aren't the ones to do it in the film. But other than that 1 minute, at the 30-minute mark, we don't see any magic until the climax of the film, which lasts maybe about 2 minutes. I don't understand how these films about witches maybe has 3 minutes of magic on screen. Look at the movement and the frantic spins that Andrew is doing. Now take a look at the work Zoe does in Legacy. It's just as bland as her writing. Zoe Lister-Jones is so fixated on writing new wave feminism piece that she forgets this is a story about teenage witches learning that using their power, even with good intentions, will always be harmful if used irresponsibly. Timmy is Zoe's biggest tool in her arsenal in trying to tell her agenda. Timmy is our Chris character if you removed any subtlety. When Chris was introduced in the first one, Sarah's friends told her he was bad news, but she was charmed by Chris, only to be betrayed by him after he gained her trust. In this movie, Lily has a period by accident in the middle of class during her first day of school, and Timmy immediately starts making harassing comments to her. He does this again later in the hallway, and again at detention. He makes no efforts to be a nice person or to even look like a decent person. The film's language conveys to us that Timmy is a popular person too, a person higher on the high school social food chain than our antagonist here. The film language conveys to us that Timmy is a popular person too, a person higher on the high school social food chain than our protagonist here. Chris didn't just hate Sarah because she was a woman. On the contrary, he went after her because she was a woman, and hated her only because she denied his advances. A petty reason, but a reason to then turn and be cruel to Sarah. Real men don't just walk up to girls in the hall and do that. This is Zoe's fictionalized world. Even Chris made all of his sexual comments about Sarah to other people, not Sarah herself, because it's more realistic. Because of the way Timmy behaves and the harm it's caused Lily emotionally, they decide to break into Timmy's house, vandalize his stuff, and cast a spell on him, unknowingly to him of course. This spell here is to make Timmy the best version of himself that he can be, which really means the best version of what a man is in Zoe's eyes. As after the spell starts to influence Timmy, he starts to go on a gender identity rant and things of that nature. That is actually insane in me. Instead of him just being an all-around stand-up guy where we see him help old ladies down the road, putting shopping carts away, or helping at the homeless shelter, it's going on about the effects of the patriarchy in American society. You're telling me, as an audience member, that in the universe of the craft and the magic force that resides in that universe acknowledges and identifies new wave feminism as the highest form of self-being? Sure, if you say so. It's not like Zoe is even saying anything when it comes to these points of view. She literally is just saying buzzwords like it's the most profound thing ever said. Does Timmy ever actually make any points that are worth hearing? Well, I guess not, since we never actually hear any of these points. The film just tells us he said them. The film comes to a screeching halt with the magic after the spell is put on Timmy. Due to almost the entirety of the second act spending its time pretending like it's building a character for him, the film section can be put as, first 30 minutes, Lily meets group and learns she's a witch. Next 30 minutes, Timmy goes from a douche to a nice guy. Last 30 minutes is revelations and climax. And the reason why I say they pretend to give him a character arc is because Zoe decides to kill him off an hour into the film. Our four main protagonists find out that Timmy commits suicide, which is all off screen. They think they could have influenced his mental state with a spell, with him even admitting that he had sexual relations with one of Lily's stepbrothers, which might sound like a big deal, but this never comes up again, with us never seeing the stepbrother's reactions or even hearing his side of the story. We never even see the brother after Timmy tells the group. Him being bisexual means nothing for the movie at the end of the day, as it is just another thing Zoe brings up to never reflect on again. The other three girls also blame Lily for Timmy's death, because in the scene where she masturbates with his shirt, she was more than just pleasuring herself, but was also casting a love spell on him, which the other three girls say could have affected him immensely from already being under the influence of another spell. We soon learn that it wasn't suicide, but I'll touch on that in a second, but this makes the whole second act of the film worthless to sit through. Somebody on Letterboxd, follow me on there if you haven't, said, "Shockingly, a man is the one with the biggest character arc in this movie." If Timmy started out as a complete dick, like he does, then was put under the best self-influence spell to start acting more kind, to then joining the group, only to then be put under the love spell selfishly by Lily, and then actively surviving the events of the movie, could he have had a character arc? You need Timmy to be released from the spell's influence to show him being kind for himself and others, not just for the spell, as well as him seeing that even though he needs changing, so do his so-called friends who drugged him without him knowing, with Timmy deciding to leave them behind and focusing on himself. Timmy doesn't even get a death scene like Chris did in the original. It literally makes the entire second act feel pointless. It's not like we can feel bad when Timmy dies either. He was a terrible person. All we ever saw him do was harass women. So why did Zoe spend 30 minutes pretending to give the only character who had the ability to save this movie a character arc, only to unceremoniously kill him off screen? To further her social agenda, of course. This is because we find out that Timmy didn't commit suicide from the influence of spells or the pressures coming out of the closet. He was actually murdered by Lily's stepdad, Adam, played by Mr. Californication himself, because Adam thought Timmy was no longer what the ideal man should be, and he had to eliminate him to help him save mankind. What? That is so fucking dumb. I have so many questions now. Does Adam just kill every single man in town who doesn't fit his standards? Does he just go around America killing guys who don't fit his image? If so, why wouldn't he just go and kill Lou? I'm sure a person with his mindset would see Lou as the definition of a failed male specimen, so why wouldn't he kill Lou during the end of the second act? Lou is also a witch, which means she is more powerful than Timmy and is a bigger threat to Adam in terms of magic ability as well as ideological standpoints. The movie also tells us that people from all over the world come to listen to him speak. So does Adam gain a following, then puts these men in a building so they can hear him speak, where he casts spells on all these men to be put in his perfect image? And if so, does this mean that Adam's casting spells to influence people? Because if he's casting spells, he can't be casting the spell like the best self spell, because we've already established that magic knows that fifth ways feminism is the highest self. Does that mean Adam was casting a worse self spell on all these men? And if he was, then he should know that his image of men is the worst image. When Adam is killed, does that solve all the sexist issues with the town? Are all the men released from the influence of Adam, if they're even under the influence to begin with? Or are all the men just trash to begin with, and nothing comes from Adam's existence or his demise? The film never explains where his motives come from, how he implements his tactics to force the men to be awful, or what his grand plan is ultimately. This whole aspect of the movie is built up terribly. Adam seemed to be a cold, heartless man from the start of the movie until the end, so no shocker when he turns out to be the villain. But it's like Mickey from Scream 2. Just because you give somebody a scene or two doesn't make it twisted when they're found out to be the bad guy. It just makes the audience bored, as we spent no time with Adam. The revelation of him being the bad guy isn't even a big revelation. The mom, a character we've seen more than Adam, and literally marries the guy, is never shown finding out Adam's true intentions, never see her reaction to her husband being a warlock, and is completely removed from the story near the end of the second act, and doesn't show up until the resolution after Adam's death, so we never see her reaction to her husband's death either. We just get a single line where one of the teenage witches comments on how she married a warlock during the last 2 minutes in the movie, because telling, not showing, is the only way Zoe knows how to write and direct this film. Talking about Adam's death as well, we wait all movie to see some more magic happen again. We get to the climax where we have 4 witches going against 1 warlock, and we still barely see anything happening. The girls circle around, the film just cuts away afterwards, having another off-screen death, with us just being told that he died in the resolution. Do you see the trend I'm talking about with Zoe here? This film is awful. Any style from the original is gone, with the film's pacing being as poor as the use of magic. When watching this film, I genuinely thought that Lister Zoe Jones was doing a favor for the studio. One of those, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, where she would direct this film for Blumhouse and Sony, and they'd help produce a movie that she wanted to make. But no, she not only directed this movie, but wrote it, and the next film she wrote and directed was produced by a whole other studio. Zoe just thought she wrote a great movie on womanhood. This film has definitely turned me off from any of her other work. As I would need to see improvement with her style. She is a writer fixated on writing propaganda and not a story.
I feel different.
Be careful. A lot of weirdos out here.
We are the weirdos, mister.
Thank you to everybody who watched, especially to the end of the video. Please make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit like, as it's the fastest and easiest way to help the channel. And please stay tuned for more videos.